bridal showers, bachelor parties, tossing bouquets and garters, the cutting of the cake, all of which are traditions that are a well-known and integral part of one's wedding. However, perhaps the most important part is the first dance with your spouse. It's a tradition that's a tradition for a reason. It's your first moment to shine as a couple, surrounded by those you love the most. But every tradition has an origin story, and the first dance is no exception to that rule. Dating back to the late 16th century, the first dance originally had nothing at all to do with tying the knot. It was a tradition, sure, but for an entirely different reason. The first dance was used as the grand opening for a ball by the guest of honor. The host or hostess would announce the opening of the ball, which was usually kicked off by a highly admired guest of honor, someone very high on the social ladder, or a member of royalty. The opening of the ball was intended to open the dance floor to the guests, and to set the overall tone and level of excitement for the evening's dancing festivities. It was a custom to recognize the guest of honor, so the host and their chosen guests would take the lead with the first dance of the evening. And once that dance was over, everyone would shake hands, and the party would truly start. By the 19th century, these old school traditions eventually made their way into the social norms of weddings. After all, at its heart, the first dance was all about putting on a show and honoring the most important guests. So gradually, a tradition developed which shifted the first dance from royalty and high society to the newlywed couple, symbolizing a celebration of their love and union. Even though the exact date of the first dance between newlyweds is unknown, the origins come from after World War I. Prior to this, the wedding reception was done in European and American weddings, mostly at the home of the bride. With limited space, the bride and groom would dine with their guests and socialize without much focus paid on any type of dancing, even though music was indeed played by bands. In a 1922 etiquette guide by author Emily Post, she observed, "On leaving their table, the bridal party begin the dancing, or possibly join the dancing, which by now has started in the living room or wherever the wedding group received. Simply put, it was recommended that the bride and groom not join in the dancing until their guests had begun. The first dance was not considered a performance, but simply symbolic to the couple personally. In fact, the first dance was more about the guests than the newlyweds." But not long after, publications started suggesting that newlyweds have their first dance alone, as it would be more intimate. This idea caught on easily among newlyweds, and it slowly spread throughout Europe and the US. It has now evolved into a tradition at modern-day weddings as a symbol of the love and strong bond of the married couple, and how well they work together as a couple while taking turns leading and following. The song chosen for the first dance is a special song to the couple. And when it comes to a song that has no doubt been used as many a first dance song, and one that I imagine will continue to do so, none hit harder than the 1998 R&B classic by K-Ci and JoJo, All My Life. Hello, and welcome on back to Heard It in a Love Song, the show where we take a trip to the past to discover the history of a love song we all know and love. This week, we take it back to the 90s to look into a duo that spun off from Jodeci, K-Ci and JoJo, and their slow jam, All My Life.
Our two gifted brothers, please welcome K-Ci and JoJo!
We start our story in Charlotte, North Carolina, on September 2nd, 1969, and June 10th, 1971. That is where and when we meet up with Anita and Cliff Haley, two gospel singers who, on those dates, brought into the world Cedric and Joel Haley. Growing up in nearby Monroe, Cedric and Joel were raised by a family that absolutely loved music. The brothers' musical influences ran the gamut, from traditional gospel artists like Shirley Caesar and Sam Cooke, to gospel groups like the Winans, and soul singers Bobby Womack and Donny Hathaway. After the family packed up and moved to Baltimore, Cedric, Joel, and Cliff formed the 8-member Little Cedric and the Haley Singers. And in 1983, with 14-year-old Cedric on lead vocals, the group made its recording debut on Leonard Moyer's Gospel Records with the album I'm All Right Now. I'm All Right Now failed to chart, but the group's next two releases, 1984's Jesus Saves and 1985's God's Blessings, did. In 1985, Atlanta International Records acquired the Gospel label, which included the Haley family's 3-album catalog. In the late 1980s, K-Ci's girlfriend at the time was also friends with another pair of brothers named Donald Devontae Swing DeGreat and Dalvin Mr. Dalvin DeGreat, who were at the time singing in a group with their father called the Don DeGreat Delegation. So she decided that the pairs of brothers needed to meet. with Mr. Dalvin saying in 2011, "She would always tell us that we need to meet K-Ci and JoJo." A short time after meeting, the brothers started living together after leaving their families to pursue musical careers. They recorded a demo and made their way to the Big Apple. When K-Ci and JoJo headed for New York to seek their musical fortune, their parents disapproved. "They weren't crazy about us leaving Monroe, North Carolina to try to make it in the business," JoJo told Ebony magazine. "It was like, why, baby?" In New York, the pairs of brothers began their journey in finding fame and quickly decided upon a name to call their quartet, Jodeci, which was an abbreviation of all the members' names. Jo coming from JoJo, D coming from the last names of the Great brothers, and C coming from K-Ci.
Got a nigga feeling like Jodeci.
It was 1991, and filled with piss and vinegar and a 29-song, 3-tape demo in hand, Jodeci set their sights on a new up-and-coming record label, a subsidiary of MCA Records, Uptown Records. Uptown Records had quite the roster in its heyday, including Heavy D and the Boys, Mary J. Blige, the Notorious B.I.G., and Sean Combs, who was an intern and worked in A&R for Uptown. More on that in a bit. With no knowledge of the whereabouts of Uptown Records HQ, the group used a phone book to find the company's address, which was located on Clinton Street in Brooklyn. It was Devontae that was the most eager to find Uptown, with him later saying, "I knew what Uptown was, and I wanted us to be there." Upon their arrival, however, they weren't initially met with the reception that they were hoping for, and the group was quickly denied an audition.
Jodeci.
Denied.
That is, until Andre Harrell agreed to hear the demo. Andre Harrell was a huge influence of the world of R&B and hip-hop, before he sadly passed away in May of 2020. Having been one part of the 80s hip-hop group Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, who broke ground on sampling the Tom Tom Club's Genius of Love and their track Genius of Rap. From there, he befriended Russell Simmons, and the pair founded Def Jam Records, before Andre broke off on his own and started Uptown Records. Upon hearing Jodeci's demo, Andre was blown away, but ultimately skeptical. The demo was almost too polished. But given that he had the 4 of them right in front of him, he arranged for them to perform, the easiest way to see if they lived up to their demo tape. They performed Come and Talk to Me, and I'm Still Waiting. Andre wasn't the only member in the audience, however, as he was joined by Jeff Redd, who would later help to establish Mary J. Blige as the phenomenon she would become, and Heavy D. The performance instantly won Andre over, and later that night, he took the quartet out to dinner and offered them a recording contract. They were placed under the care and watchful eye of Sean Puff Daddy Combs, who helped to establish their image, a more relaxed and decidedly more New York take on the more palatable groups like New Edition and Boyz II Men. The group released their debut album, Forever My Lady, on May 28, 1991, and it featured the #1 R&B singles Forever My Lady, Stay,
Just for tonight.
and Come and Talk to Me. Forever My Lady went on to sell over 3 million copies. They followed it up in 1993 with a second album that nearly did not happen at all. Jodeci, unhappy with their treatment from Uptown Records, were highly considering breaking contract and heading over to Death Row Records. And while that move never did happen, the record did, with no promotion to speak of. Diary of a Mad Band still reached number 3 on the Billboard 200 and number 1 on the R&B album charts, and spawned the #1 R&B hit, Cry For You. As well as 2 other songs that charted but not at number 1, Fiendin' and What About Us. The third album was what really pushed the band over the edge to stardom. Entitled The Show, The After Party, The Hotel. It was released on July 18, 1995 and reached number 2 on the Billboard 200, making it the group's highest peaking release. The album also contained the top 40 hits Love You For Life, Get On Up, and Freakin' You.
Every time I close my eyes, I wake up feeling so horny.
In 1996, when the promotion of their third album slowed, K-Ci and JoJo decided to temporarily split from Jodeci to record on their own for MCA. Going simply by K-Ci and JoJo, their success came as rapidly as their success in Jodeci did. The brothers collaborated with Tupac on the Grammy-nominated song How Do You Want It, and after that gained them even more notoriety, they decided it was time to work on an album of their own. Recording took place in 1996 and 1997 at recording studios in New York City and the Los Angeles area. It was produced by JoJo and several others, including Devontae Swing, John Robinson, who had worked with Diana Ross, Gladys Knight, 3LW, Pink, and TLC, James M. Tume, who worked with Roberta Flack, Lou Rawls, The Spinners, and Miles Davis, and Jeff Redd. Seeking to shed Jodeci's bad boy image, they wanted to make an album that everyone, including their Christian mother, would be able to listen to. With K-Ci telling Ebony, "We want to write songs that women can listen to. You can listen to this in the car, riding with the folks. With Jodeci, we might sing Freakin' You, and with K-Ci and JoJo, we don't use the word sex." On June 17, 1997, they released their debut, Love Always. 4 songs from Love Always became singles, with all 4 appearing in the top 25 on the Hot R&B/hip-hop songs. The first single, You Bring Me Up, peaked at number 26 on the Billboard Hot 100. The second single, Last Night's Letter, peaked at number 46 on the Hot 100. The fourth single, Don't Rush, Take Love Slowly, peaked at number 24 on the US Rhythmic Top 40. But it's the third single that we are here to talk about, as it was a monster. Yes, I pray that you do love me too. All My Life was recorded at Audio Achievements in Torrance, California. Some giants have recorded at Audio Achievements, including NWA, Eazy-E, and Bone Thugs-n-Harmony. Released in the United States on March 17, 1998, it debuted on the US Billboard Hot 100 at number 15. By the following week, it reached the number 1 spot, and ended up staying on the Hot 100 for 35 weeks. However, that almost never happened at all, as initially All My Life was almost cut from the album. JoJo told MTV that he penned the song about his 7-year-old daughter, Kayla, but ultimately offered it to an unnamed artist. The song was originally supposed to be used for another artist, a female artist on A&M Records, but we listened to it, and after we got out of the studio, it was like, I'm keeping this. This is too hot. And the world agreed with that sentiment, as it went double platinum in the US, New Zealand, and Australia. All My Life was nominated for 2 Grammy Awards at the 1999 Grammys. Best R&B Song, where it went up against A Rose Is Still a Rose by Aretha Franklin, The Boy Is Mine by Brandy and Monica, and Lean on Me by Kirk Franklin with Mary J. Blige, The Family, Bono, Crystal Lewis, and R. Kelly.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
All of which lost out to Doo-Wop, That Thing by Lauryn Hill. It was also nominated for Best R&B Performance by a Duo or Group with Vocal, along with Stay by The Temptations, Nothing Even Matters by Lauryn Hill and D'Angelo, and Lean on Me by Kirk Franklin with Mary J. Blige, The Family, Bono, Crystal Lewis, and R. Kelly.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
All of which lost out to The Boy Is Mine by Brandy and Monica. The song's accompanying music video was directed by Laura M. Schwartz, who produced or directed the following videos.
Yeah. And if you don't know, now you know, nigga.
Got all my sisters with me.
The video was nominated for Best R&B Video at the 1998 MTV Music Video Awards, along with You Make Me Wanna by Usher and The Boy Is Mine by Brandy and Monica, all of which lost out to Wyclef Jean, Gone to November. All My Life comes in at 128 beats per minute. There is something so sickly sweet about All My Life. It's the perfect combination of the keys and strings mixed with the buttery smooth voices of K-Ci and JoJo. The moment you hear, you know your heart is in for a treat. They really captured that indescribable feeling of being madly in love and being so appreciative of the one that you are in love with. This week's Love Homework is another song about being appreciative about the one you absolutely adore, Here to Mars by Coheed and Cambria. And that's it. The end of another love song history lesson. If you like what you learned and you'd like to continue learning, subscribe, hit the bell, drop a like below, and join me again Friday for the history of a love song we all know and love. Until next time, remember it's Valentine's Day. Go spend some time with the one you love. And remember, you heard it in a love song.
And I thank God that I finally found you. And